but what I'm going to do to begin with though is fix up the intersection happening. You notice I'm doing them one by one. I'm not selecting them all and doing them at the same time because I want them to be slightly different. Again, it gets back to that making it look man-made and not made by a machine, so that they don't all appear exactly the same. And I am purposefully intersecting the back of the support so that some of them are further out than others. Again, it just makes it a little different, each of them a little different than each other. They're not all in exactly the same spot. They're not all the same distance out from the wall, and they're not all exactly in the same position. You know, and it's just subtly different, but it makes a difference in the model. And again though, it's like I said, I think I may put a third one in, but I'll wait till I go out of isolation view so I can line them up properly. Let's move this one here. Yeah, it just goes back to what I was telling you guys about making them all look just slightly different than each other. They're not all the same distance into the wall, they're not all facing in the same direction, and they're even not all exactly in the same height. A couple of them are a little lower than others. Just marginally, not much. Like, I'm not going to move one way down here, but just make them all slightly different. And like I said, you can use an array to maybe line them up initially, but then go through and move them by hand to make them different. Okay, here's another one just here. Again, I'm going to rotate this one around a little bit as well. I'm just going to move it back out a bit more. Alright, I think we should be good. Let's exit isolation mode here. And I want to jump around to the back and check that large piece through here. See, at the moment I'm using two supports, and I have a feeling that just doesn't look quite right because that's a large banister. And I'm using two supports for these smaller ones. You would have at least three through here to hold that up. So I'm going to add another one. So I'm going to copy one from here because I just don't want to have to move it all the way around. But I'll change the texture on it. So again, just holding down the Shift key and Max, I'm making a copy. Again, because of that bug in Max, I'm going to have to copy the UVs across. You probably won't have that problem in the 3D software you're using. It's just a bug in 3D Studio Max. It shouldn't be doing it. And I'm also going to change that texture out. So I'm just going to move my viewport over here and jump into, just got to find which one it was. It was supports. This is it. Let me see what this first one looks like. That looks suitably different from the other two that I can use that. Because remember, we made 5 versions of that, so we have a few we can choose between. I'm going to move that one over. Again, I'm not using an array because I don't want these to be in exactly the same spot. I'm just doing it by eye. Don't make them too different, but don't make them all exactly the same. And I'm also going to select that, and that banister. And I'm going to go back into isolation mode. Again, just to make it easier on myself. Alright. Now the two on the ends are the same distance in from the edge, but not exactly the same. The one in the middle, I do want to move over a little bit more. I don't want it to look too odd, like it's a bit too close to this one and far from this one, so I do want to try and center that up a bit more. Again, not exactly, just by eye. Alright, let's exit isolation mode. And pull back a bit here. I just think having the 3 supports there makes more sense for a piece of geometry or for a banister that's that large. You wouldn't just have the 2, you'd have at least 3. I wouldn't probably put more than 3. You don't want it to look too odd, too different from the others here. Okay, so we've fixed up our supports. Again, they're not all identical, they're not all... We've got 5 textures that we're repeating randomly around the outside so that people don't notice we're reusing textures. They are slightly off from each other as far as being... Some are a little higher, a little lower, some are a bit further back into the wall than others are further out, but not much, just slightly. Now I'm just going to keep checking to see if there's anything else I've forgotten. Or anything else that just needs a little bit of a tweak. Just checking the columns here, they're all, it should be sitting about halfway on the top of that stone border. That looks fine. I recall, yeah, I thought 3 looked better as well, Sniper, okay. I do know when I made these lamps, I purposefully, initially when I made them they were all in a line, so these 2 side pieces were lined up to the middle piece. But again, I thought it looked more interesting to pull them forward a little bit so that these 2 side pieces here weren't in a direct line but were pulled forward. It just added a little bit more visual interest to the lamps. Didn't pull them forward much, just slightly. It's just little things like that that can help sell the model. And it'll add more interest in lighting and stuff when you start doing a render, if they're not all in a line. Because when I bring it into view, I probably will put some light sources in here. I do want to do like probably a late afternoon sort of render, early evening, so I'll have probably have some light sources in all of these lamps. The 3 there, and the 2 that the angel is holding. I think I softened all the columns up, so I'm pretty good there. I know I softened the banisters up and the stairs up. I know I did all the banister railings, and I know I did the stone here. I think I may have... Did I do this border here? Yeah, I did. Did I? Let me just have a quick look here. Again, I'm just going to isolate this for a minute because I want to check whether I've softened up those edges or not. And I didn't. I'm going to do that now. Because again, these borders should be worn, so... Let's collapse the stack here. Again, just because it's starting to get a bit high. These ones, because I made them properly, I can loop them and not have to select them all individually. This inner edge is inside the wall, so I'm not going to soften that edge. I'm just going to soften the outside edges here. I'm not going to soften the bottom edge either, or chamfer or bevel or whatever you want to call it. So just the top edge, top outside edge, and the 2 front edges. Now you can do a chamfer inside of the edit poly modifier, but Max 2017 I think they introduced it in. Actually no, 2016, because I've used it in that. actually added a specific modifier for it, and it does a much better job. So I always recommend you use the specific modifier instead of doing it through the edit poly, if you're using Max, that is. I'm going to pull those back. I'm going to set it up to 3 iterations because I want it to be smooth. I'm going to pull that back a bit, pull that up a bit more. I think that should be good. Let me just turn off edge spaces here and have a look. No, that's much better. It's much softer edge on it now. Okay, well, exit isolation. So we've softened up the edge on that. And like I said, you're really only seeing that outer edge. You're not seeing the inside one. It's inside the wall. And I never do the bottom edge. Let's do the one on the other side. Again, I'm just going to collapse my stack so it's a bit more manageable. And go into edge mode and loop it. Alright, now, before I actually do anything to that, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to exit isolation mode. I'm going to turn off edged faces here. I'm just going to select the one we've already done. Just turn that off. I'm going to copy that modifier, and again, that's another reason why putting a modifier on top instead of using the one built in to edit poly is really helpful in Max, because you can copy and paste the exact same settings between different pieces of geometry. I'm going to select this one here, turn our edges back on again. We're going to paste that modifier in. So now we're going to make sure it's exactly the same as the one on the other side. And let's select the one at the back. Again, we'll go into isolation mode, and again I'm going to collapse my stack. Again, I'm going to turn edge faces on and select this one here. Yeah, the copy modifier really can save you a huge amount of time in Max. It really can, it's really useful. Now I made a mistake here, and it's dropped it down to a mesh. Always work in poly mode. If you notice, before I change it to poly, because I know people are always wondering why work in poly and not mesh. I can't loop my selection or do any of that in edit mesh. It's really limited in the amount of functions that you can do, which is why I always recommend you go back into edit poly. You can manipulate the mesh a lot more. So now we've looped that out top edge. I'm just going to select the outside edges here. And that was part of the reason we were having to with those columns and not being able to chamfer them, because they were originally created as a mesh and not a poly. And that's why we had to put a quadruply mesh on top to turn it into quads, and then we could do our chamfer properly. Here we have our edges selected. I'm just going to paste that modifier on, and again it's going to copy exactly the same settings that we've used for the other two, which is what we want. I'm going to turn off our edge faces. We're going to exit isolation. And I know it's hard to see those chamfering, but believe me, when you start to do a render, the lighting will pick it up, and you'll notice the difference between a hard edge and a soft one. It's hard to see in the viewport here because it's only a very low sort of resolution render that Max is doing to show you, but when you're actually physically doing renders, the lighting will be affected by the hard edge. The softer edge will look much better. I think we may have softened everything up now. I don't think there's anything left that needs to be fixed. I think everything's been done. I know I've done all those. I know I've done those. Yeah, no, I think that's it, unless anybody has noticed any geometry that's intersecting that shouldn't be. I don't see any myself. Just going to swing my way around the model slowly so I can check it all. All of my columns are in alignment, all of my small columns are in alignment. And again, I know with these small columns here, you're going to be tempted to use an array, and by all means do, but just go in and tweak a couple of them, and that's what I did with just a few of them here and there. Either move them just slightly out of alignment so they're not directly straight, they're just angled a little, or I move them so they're not all completely the same distance apart. Some are a little closer together than others. Not by much, just a little. Just a little. Remember, a little bit will go a long way. Don't go nuts. Alright, let's save out our model here again, now that we've finished doing our correction. Okay, I've got my fresh cup of coffee, so I'm good. I want to say a thank you to Binder05 for following me on my Twitch channel. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it when you guys follow me on Twitch. I think I pronounced your name correctly, BND. So thank you very much. Okay, so we've fixed up our model. I've made any corrections to any intersecting geometry. I've made sure everything has smooth edges. Let's start bringing in those two new angel statues that I want to move up to the top here, because I just feel that as it is, the terrace just needs something in these corners. You wouldn't have to put statues up there. You could put, like I said, like benches, stone benches. You could put large urns like these in there. I think two new angel statues though would look really interesting, so that's what I'm going to put in there. So what I'm going to do is, I've saved my file out here. I'm going to import and do a merge. Yeah. I've already created the angel statues. I did them a few weeks ago, so I'm just going to jump into my garden terrace directory here. Pointing angel statues R2 for revision 2, that's the one I want. Just going to select those two objects. Max gives you an option when you're merging scenes as to exactly what you want from the file you're importing from. Okay, they're over there, so I'm just going to move them into view. I'm going to select one at this stage and move it over. I'll pull this one over. Again, I'm going to go into view here so I can move them more easily. Instead of local mode, I'm going into the viewport mode. Again, I'm doing this by eye. I don't want them exactly the same, in exactly the same spot. I don't want them too far out, but not exactly the same. I'm going to pull them up a little higher because I want to put one of these bases under them. Again, I'm going to jump into my top viewport here because it's easier to position things in the top viewport. Again, Max, it's just a little bit sluggish. I hit the button twice and should have only hit it once. There we go. Alright, now let's move these around where I want them. I think probably around here. Again, I'm lining them up. I'm using this center line here on the tiles, but I'm not putting them in exactly the same position. You see this one's a little bit further forward from the tile line than this one. The wing is actually a bit further back on that one. I'm doing that on purpose so that they're not in exactly the same spot. And this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles in, and this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to pull this one over a little bit. Let's jump back into our perspective view here. Again, I'm going to full screen this so we can get a better view of what we're doing. Alright, now I'm going to make a copy of this base here. I could put the angel statues directly on the tile, but I think they'd look neater if they're on a base. So we're just going to copy the bases from down here. And again, I'm going to pull it down by eye. I don't want to use an array, I just want to do all this by eye. I'm pulling it down until it just starts to intersect the tiles on the ground. Just like that. I'm stopping it before those curved pieces here intersect the tile line. Alright, now I'm going to jump back into the top viewport again. Come on, Max. And I'm just going to move them until they're roughly underneath of those angels. I'm just going to hold down the shift key and make a copy of this one. I'm going to rotate it though, so it's not in exactly the same position. And that'll just help hide the fact again that we're reusing the same piece of geometry again. And again, this is in exactly the same alignment, so I'm just going to pull this one forward just a little bit. So it's just a little different from that one there. Let's go back into our 3D view here. And I'm going to move this angel down until it just again starts to intersect that base. And I'm going to move the base over a little bit as well. I'm going to do the same thing with this one here. I don't want to move her, I want to move the base itself. I'm going to rotate that around a bit. Let's pull back and see what those angels look like. Now, I'm just working out here whether they should be further into the center or further out, or if they're in the right spot where they are. And I think they might be okay where they are. Again, I'm just looking at them to make sure that they're relatively the same distance in from the edges. Not exactly, but because I don't want to be in exactly the same spot. I'm just gauging whether that would be a natural position for them, like so that it allows enough room for people if they were walking on the top of this to walk around them. That's why I don't want them too close to the edge at the front or to the side here. You want to allow, to make it realistic and natural, enough room for people that they could walk around them. And I also want them out of alignment with these center angels, because it'll help to draw the eye from the step to the angel to her to the dome. It's sort of like a line of eyesight thing. You notice the angel here, which will draw your eye to her, and then she draws the eye to the dome. It's that focal point thing, eye line, line of sight sort of thing. It helps to balance up the look of the model. And I really think it needed these statues to create a bit more interest in the overall design of the Terrace. I think we might be good with that. Just going to angle it around a bit like that. I'm going to pull out a little bit so I can see just a bit more of the model. Alright, again let's do a save. And now I think what we'll end up doing is growing some ivy on this. So now I'm going to use a plugin, and it's a free plugin you can download if you use 3D Studio Max. I'm not sure if he makes the plugin for other 3D software. I don't think he does. He may, but I don't think he does. As soon as that's saved out, I'm going to load up my browser and show you exactly where I got the plugin from. It's a plugin I've been using for years. It does a great job for what it is. All it does is grow ivy. Thank you very much, Sign Spawn. I'm glad you like it. We just finished the texturing yesterday, and now we're just doing the final touches to soften it up a bit so that it's ready for export. Then I can take it into Eon View to do some beauty renders in a full-on 3D environment with vegetation. I'll probably also take the model into Max 2016 to do just some still model shots and VRAM, just of the model on its own, before I upload it to sell on my Creative Market store and Cornucopia 3D. But yeah, so getting back to the Grow Ivy plugin, I believe it's only for Max, but we'll have a quick look here. I can't for the life of me remember the guy's name either, but I'm sure when we go to his website we'll be able to work it out from there. But all this plugin does is grow ivy. And you can grow any sort of ivy with it. You can change out the leaf textures. You can add any sort of mesh to it, which I'm going to be doing to create flowers. So I'm just going to go to Google because I can't remember exactly his website, but you can find it through Google. If you just type GRWIVY, and I'm going to do it for 3D Max. GuruWare is the name of the website, guruware.at. He makes a lot of plugins for different types of things. We're interested in the Grow Ivy plugin. That's the one I'm going to be using now, so I'm just going to go there. And all it does is grow ivy. It's a pretty full-on plugin. It has a lot of options for you to choose from, and it's completely free. So, you know, shout out to him for making this plugin for Max completely free. And it looks like you can use it in Max version 2010 all the way up to 2017. So regardless of what version of Max you're using, it's available to install. It's free. There's no restrictions. It's completely usable, completely free. So anyone that does use Max and is interested in growing any ivy on any of their models, I thoroughly recommend this guy's website and his plugin. It's really good. So let's do that now. I want to grow ivy. Smurfberry Barbecue, hey, how are you? I still love that username, Smurfberry Barbecue. I'm going to grow ivy on parts of the model. Now, it can get quite heavy as far as polygons go with this ivy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow the ivy in parts of the model, on parts of the model. mainly on the front here. And then I'm going to do an optimize on the geometry. You're banging your head against the wall, Smurfberry. Why? That can't be healthy or good for you. I'm going to do an optimize on the geometry before I export it to take it into Eon View, just to reduce the polygons a little bit. Because I'll probably end up, when I end up selling the model, I'll include the, more than likely include the ivy as well, as a separate object so people can remove it if they don't want it. So I'm thinking growing ivy up this wall here and partially up this statue, and on the front of the border here and partly up this statue. So we have ivy on this side down the bottom, and we have ivy on the wall and up the top here, and that's just to balance it out a bit. You don't want to grow ivy over everything. So if you wanted a really overgrown scene, you could, but I'm not going to do it for this. But because this mesh is quite detailed, I'm not going to, when I'm growing my ivy here, I'm not going to have all of it in view at the same time. I'm going to select parts and hide the rest. That's just to help the plugin cope with the geometry as it's growing. But before I do that, I'm going to merge another file, which are some flowers that I've created that I want to grow on the ivy. So I have a flower bud, a closed bud, and an open flower. I'm just going to bring them in. I'm going to find them here in my viewport. We're doing a touch up on a photo with subpar lighting conditions. Oh, that's never nice, is it? Yeah, it's hard to put information into a photo that's not there to begin with lighting particularly. If it hasn't been taken in great conditions, you can only do so much with it. Are you still doing the, wasn't it you that was doing the graduation photo thing? So we have our flowers here. These are just, like I said, it's a closed bud, an open flower, and a partially open flower. These are a purple colour. I was considering changing it to a red, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow the ivy using the purple, and then I may open the textures in Photoshop and colour correct them to make them more of a red. Yeah, you're still working on the batch of grad photos, yep. Yeah, I know the feeling, working on something that, particularly a photo that hasn't been taken in ideal lighting conditions and trying to get it to look good. Like I said, if the information isn't in the photo, it makes your life hard. So yeah, what we'll do is I'll grow up using purple, but I have a feeling I'd like to make the flowers that are on the model red. I think red would just stand out a bit more. But we'll grow the purple in, and all we have to do is change the texture in Photoshop. So let's start with this side here, I think. I'm going to choose the front border. I'm going to choose the column, the stairs, the lower tiles, the actual border itself, as well as the statue. I'm going to grab that column. I'm just making sure I get enough geometry in case the plugin, as it grows, hits any of these side pieces. And I'm going to grab that column there. Thank you for the follow, Bender. Like I said, thank you. I appreciate you following me. Or every time you guys follow me on Twitch, I do appreciate it. I really do. It's very good of you guys. I'm also going to take this stairs here as well, just in case, again, the ivy grows to hit the stairwell. I'm not going to take the steps themselves though. I don't want any of the ivy growing on the stairs. Or do I? I lie. I will take the steps too. I'm going to go into isolation mode here, make sure that what I've selected is enough. Okay, so we're going to grow some ivy that's growing here on this outer border to begin with, and then I'm going to grow also some ivy going about halfway up this angel statue. And I've included these side pieces just in case the ivy spreads and starts growing here. So I have no control once I start the plugin. It grows very naturally. So, but I think that's enough geometry. We shouldn't need anything more. And I'm selecting just what I'm what I think the ivy will touch, just so that the plugin has less polygons to deal with as it's growing. Alright, but before we do that, I'm going to jump into my top viewport, and because I'm growing the ivy on this outer border, I want to give it a base so it knows where the ground plane will be. So all I'm going to do here is throw down a plane like that. And again, I'm just going to move it down so it sits below the border. And that's just to simulate the ground plane that it would sit on naturally when it's in a scene. I'll be deleting it as soon as the ivy's grown. I've also got to, I'm just going to select those and exit isolation here, because I have to remember I have to select the flowers as well. So I'm just going to also select these oh, come on Max, don't do this. I'm also going to select the flowers, so now I'm going to jump back into isolation mode. Alright. So we have the parts of the geometry that we want to grow the ivy on. I've placed the plane down just to simulate the ground plane, and I've got my flowers in my scene here. I already have the plugin installed, and that's just a simple matter in Max of copying the DLO into the plugins folder. And then if you go into your creation tab here, you'll have an option called GuruWare. I'm just going to pull in here a bit. I'm going to select the grow ivy, and I'm going to drop one just there. Now, all that is a little X, a little green X. So what you want to do is you want to move that into position where you want the ivy to start growing. So jump into my top view here. And I want the ivy to grow probably from just off center of that border. I do want to move the ivy grower as close to the border as I can, not intersecting the geometry, but have it as close as you can get it, so that when it starts growing it has something to attach to grow up. And I'm going to jump into my front viewport here. I'll pull it down. Again, you don't want to pull it down too far that it goes past that plane and into the floor. Just have it so it's sitting just above the floor and just beside the border there. I may actually bring my floor down a bit, I think. Like that. I'm just going to pull the ivy up because it looks like it's just intersecting the floor there. I don't want that to happen. So you can see our ivy grower is just above the floor and just in from the border. Okay, let's pull out a bit. And jump into our modify tab. And these are the options now for the ivy growing itself. I'm just going to random up, do a different seed value here, so I'll go, doesn't matter, 1986. 1896. That's just so the ivy, every time it grows, if you change the seed, will look completely different. I want to come down to leaf meshes. It's been a while since I used the plugin, so bear with me here. We want to find our flowers here. I'm going to select the bud as the first mesh, full flower as the second mesh, and the half open flower as the third. I'm going to leave the rest of them at default. I'm just having a look through our properties here in the plugin, see if there's anything I need to change. Let's see, to leave that seed value for the leaves at default there.